I recreated this still from Euphoria, and in this video, I'm gonna talk about the breakdown process of the actual composition, the lighting, and especially the color grading session and how I graded it similarly. What's up, beautiful people? It is Desiree LeCap, aka LeCapture, back on your screen with another great video. I hope y'all have been doing good, great, and abundant. I like to try to recreate random stills that I find on Shot Deck, which by the way is probably the most useful tool as a cinematographer or anyone looking for inspiration from their favorite films. Okay, so with that being said, let's get on to the recreation. We know that Euphoria has probably one of the most best cinematography we've seen. It's an instantly recognizable visual phenomenon with that emotional realism that cinematographer Marcel Rev implemented throughout the series. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna break down the shot. Starting with the composition, based on the rule of thirds, our subject is smack dab in the middle, making it a centered composition. As for frame size, it does look like a medium close-up. We know that because a medium close-up frames the subject just above the head to just below the chest. A medium close-up also helps the audience register the subject's emotions and facial expression while also still showcasing the background. So on to lighting. It looks like there's one main source of lighting coming from behind, which is called a backlight, creating that silhouette look, meaning the dark shape or outline of the subject is against a lighter background. Along with that silhouette look, we have this halo effect that rims around her hair. So as I was recreating this still, there was some trial and error. At first, I only used one source of light, which was the SmallRig RC120B, and I stuck it outside my patio, assuming the light would spill onto the window and be strong enough to hit the subject. I was wrong. Because I had similar curtains, I tried to aim right in between the gap of the two curtains to get that similar silhouette look. And I didn't really think too much about the halo effect until I got into post-production and I started color grading it. So, as you can see, it's fairly similar in color, but we are missing that one aspect that sort of makes this scene pop. It's the halo effect that I just mentioned. Again, it's the light rim around that makes her hair pop more. We tried it again, set everything up because I wasn't gonna give up. This time, I got my partner to be the subject, so that way I was able to focus on getting the composition and lighting as close as possible. So assuming they had a more powerful light source behind their subject, I had two fairly strong but not strong enough lights, so this is what I did. Again, I placed a SmallRig RC120B outside in its similar position to spill onto the curtains. Then I took the Amaran 60X and I put it directly behind my subject, specifically for that halo. It took a few times to get the lighting pretty close, but it ended up kind of working out. I adjusted my camera settings manually, putting my ISO a little higher and kind of blown out to ensure that the silhouette and halo effect really came through, because I knew in post-production I would just crush the shadows and the highlights and the contrast. So here's the raw clip uncolored straight at the camera. So with that, let's take it into the color grading process. So basically, this is the before and this is after. I did my best to get as close as possible, knowing that Euphoria shot most or all of their scenes with film stock. We just ended up manipulating it with some color settings. So I'm just gonna talk about each adjustment layer and what each of them kind of have for color settings. Okay, so this is the complete raw. I had the original still sandwiched mine just so I have it there for reference when I'm coloring. And what I did, because I didn't want this frame on the left side, I kind of just masked it out. Duplicated my layer, masked it out, and then kind of just faded it there. Okay, so let's talk about the first adjustment layer. As you can see, this is my first adjustment layer. I'm gonna start with basic correction. So I brought my temperature a little under 50%, more towards the orange side, and then I kind of gave it a little bit of a green tone. As I mentioned earlier, I crushed my contrast up. I brought my highlights up so it's more blown out behind her. I crushed my shadows down because you could see that if it wasn't, then you'd be able to see her face, and we don't really want to see the details of her face, we just want the silhouette. And then I kind of brought the blacks up as well. For my creative, I threw in this random LUT that's already in Premiere Pro, so without that it would look like that. So it kind of gave it that tint that I was looking for. And then I ended up bringing up some saturation, a little bit of vibrance, and then bringing the shadow tint to orange. As we can see, we're kind of getting there, but I did realize that my curtains were a lot thicker than what they used. So theirs is a little more lighter because it is see-through. Ours is more like blackout curtains. So the lighting didn't come through as strongly as I wanted it to. With my curves, this is where I was really messing with it, especially bringing some reds and pulling away some greens so we get that magenta warm tone. So basically without my RGB curves, this is what it would look like. Just that green dull tone. I ended up pulling some of the red midtones up, so without that it would look like so, a little desaturated. So bringing the reds up really helped, and also taking away some greens in the midtones and the highlights. So just mixing in the reds and the greens and leaving the blues alone. For my whites, I just crushed the midtones even more, because without that we would see some details in her face, and we really don't want that. For my second adjustment layer here, I just added a little bit more highlights. Crushed the whites down because I didn't want the whites to spill throughout the entire like image. So I kind of put those down and then crushed the shadows a lot more. Because again, if it was any more up, or like where it would be without this adjustment layer, we still kind of see some details in her face. So just crushed those down, brought some highlights back up to try to blast the back curtain as much as possible. That's pretty much all I did for my second adjustment layer. For my third adjustment layer here, I did more of crushing my shadows down, bringing up my highlights. Just adding these adjustment layers allows me to increase my color settings past the max you could do for just one adjustment layer. So that's basically why I duplicated it and kind of repeated my process, especially with my shadows and my highlights. I brought the highlights up more to kind of blast that out, and then I also brought it down to the blue a little bit, because without that it was kind of a little too orange for me. I brought some blues in, it made the very like small adjustment. And then for my hue versus saturation, I also brought down the yellows more. You could add some grain into this one as well. I think it'll help a lot. So let's try to do that. So the noise kind of made it a little more like with that film stock. I did the best I can to recreate this. Recreating things typically help me build my skills further as a cinematographer, because I'm able to play around with lighting and camera composition and already have a reference to bounce off of. I say go out and recreate your own things, whatever inspires you. I believe there's no such thing as copying. You're really just inspired by whatever you consume, especially if it's creative and you're like, oh, I want to try this out. Go ahead and try it out. Don't be afraid to try things out. There's trial and error. You're learning as you go, but you'll never know if you don't give yourself a chance to try. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know down in the comments below if you'd like me to recreate something else that you've seen, or that you just anything really, and I'd be happy to try it out. Please give this video a like, share, comment, subscribe. Anything helps, really. I appreciate you all for the support and tuning in, and I'll see y'all at the next video. Peace.